Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Into the North podcast. I am one of your hosts, Noobzors, joined by my co-hosts.
Null here.
Sick Robot, what's up, guys?
And Spleenface, hi everyone.
So we'd just like to say thanks for the awesome feedback and response from our last episode, especially our special episode, which is something we're trying out. And we look to do more of those in the future. And thanks for everyone's great responses. Today we are going to be covering the newly announced Commander Advisory Group. Briefly, we're going to be touching on some quick card reviews from Ravnica Allegiance, and we're going to be talking about Untap and Win commanders, specifically kind of branching off of one of the cards that was released in Ravnica Allegiance, being Prime Speaker Vannifar. And we'll be covering listener questions as always at the end of the episode. Okay, so that covers introductions. Let's go on to housekeeping. So
the first announcement that we have is, since we released our last proper episode, we are now on YouTube as Into the North. You can find all the episodes there. They have background images, and one of them even has some relevant images in it. But it's mostly just for audio.
Quality editing. Nice.
Editing prowess.
It takes enough time to edit the audio.
Okay, I guess also under housekeeping, we released our special episode of Gitrog, and so our next special episode, these aren't necessarily going to be released on a set schedule, but as I was telling these guys, I think that these special episodes of where we go really in depth in decks is something that not a lot of other Commander podcasts are doing. So this is something that really separates the cEDH podcast content from regular Commander content. So that's something we really want to do more of in the future. So we'd love to hear what you guys would like us to cover and what guests you'd like us to have, and we'll try to make that happen. So also special thanks to Calvin, Hisp, and S. Lover for all of the podcast editing, our podcast music, and our podcast logo in that order. And then finally, about GPs. So if you want to play with any of us, you can probably find us at GP Toronto, that's February 9th through 10th, and GP Niagara, that's April 20th through 21st. There's going to be, my understanding is there's going to be quite a few cEDH players at GP Niagara, at least from what I've heard. So, maybe try to make it out to that. You have lots of cEDH going on. And GP Toronto, I don't know how many people from the cEDH community I've heard going on, but I know some people will be there. I'll try to make it, but it's
also probably going to be...
Yeah, I'm sure some subset of us will be there.
I'll definitely be there.
If we announce that a lot of...
It's probably also a bit
short. And if we announce that a lot of cEDH players will be there, then we'll probably get a good turnout, right?
A bit short notice from when this is probably going to get released, but
True.
We'll hope to see some people there.
Yeah. Look for us.
Yeah,
post something.
always.
No, I'm just kidding.
Racking those
But not
tomatoes.
kidding.
Don't.
Racking up
We
tickets.
strongly advise against people taking their competitive commanders
I
into
gotta
fire on
grind those
demand
prize
pods.
tickets to buy off the
I
prize
think
wall, man.
that's
Alright,
Any
fine.
of my shocks.
Okay, cool. I think that wraps up housekeeping. Let's move on to new developments. Sick. You've got something
Yeah,
here,
dude.
so why don't you take it away?
Yes, me and Lobster, Siggy, all that stuff, good stuff.
Lobster, Siggy,
However
from the
you know
Ravnica.
him, whatever name he is known by. We just put up sort of a mini primer on 4-color Rashmi, which is sort of Thrasios, Vile Smasher, Control-y, PTSE, good old pile of value engines and mana. So you should go check that out if you haven't. It's up on Tapped Out. It's up on the subreddit if you haven't checked it out yet. Pretty cool. Yeah, we sort of go into the theory and big old write-up on how 4-color control sort of functions in the way that we've envisioned it, and how to, counter some of those Tymna strategies that are pretty widespread right now. Just a bit.
I quite like that list. I played against Spleen has piloted for I don't know. You've moved on now, right? Or you still
I still play
plays
it.
it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because from what I'm playing against it, it's been quite strong. I've been really impressed with that deck. And our last thing under new develop, or sort of our last thing, is MtG Salvation has the Magic Forum. They have added a cEDH section, and in there they've got cEDH forums, and then they've also got primers, a primer section. So if you want to submit a primer to MtG Salvation, reach out to one of the moderators on that forum, and they will hook you up with a primer template. And yeah, so that's brand new. They reached out to us and some other members of the community to try and customize that for cEDH, trying to meet our needs. So that's great of them to reach out and trying to make cEDH content available on websites, Magic websites, which is not something that's necessarily super supported.
Yeah, I think this is a really nice step forward just for I think for hosting primers and all that, and actually like having some of the community there and having it like there as a jumping off point for people looking to get into the format. But also, I think this is actually a really big step forward for written content for cEDH, because there hasn't really been a centralized place to have articles hosted or just like write-ups in general, considering that Reddit isn't really a great place to have those. So I think this is a pretty nice addition to our current arsenal of stuff.
I'm excited to not have to write primers in format using Tapped Out. So.
I feel like that's everyone. Yeah, Tapped Out is not the best, but we've made
it is the only.
We've made do with what we've had so far. Okay, well, on this episode, I will be debuting a brand new segment. Okay, this segment is called Gut Check. On Gut Check, I will be asking a tough question to the other hosts, and I'll be answering this question myself. And all you're supposed to do is just give the first answer that you think is that you can stand by. No justification, no supporting arguments. Just give me the answer.
And then he goes last, so he has the final say.
Here we go. What is the best color in cEDH? Go.
Blue.
Black.
Blue. Yeah.
Green.
You. Green.
Okay.
Blue.
Disgusting.
Interesting. Okay. that's actually quite the surprising range there. Okay. So let us know what you think of the question, what your response
you hate
is.
The most.
And follow the format. Follow the format. Don't give any justification at all. Just spam into our Discord. Colors
so
that you
are
think
you
are
with
good.
Sick Robot?
If you aren't playing Sultai, you're not playing anything good.
That you're asking.
You know what? Before this episode releases, I'll make sure we'll add a channel for gut check responses, just so that they're all easily readable, or maybe a poll.
Oh, that'd be cool. Poll would be cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that wraps up gut check, and you're going to look forward to that in future episodes where I'm going to just ask really tough questions of our hosts. Okay. So the final sort of new developments topic number 0 for this episode is the Commander Advisory Group, which is something that was announced by Sheldon of the Rules Committee about how they reached out to a lot of content creators and notable figures in the EDH community to act as sort of a secondary rules committee that's not really doesn't have power, just sort of advises them. I don't know. It's starting to set up like a medieval court, getting like all.
Yeah, it's written as their role is written as to provide feedback on topics suggested by the RC and raise issues they believe need attention. So
yeah,
pretty much they're cheerleaders.
My understanding from listening to Josh from the Command Zone talk about his take on it is they're not really forced to agree with what the rules committee is going on. They're not going to be soften their comments. They're still going to be tough on the rules committee. They're going to talk about all these changes on their shows and whatnot. So it's nice that they're not stifling anyone, and they're broadening their reach of information, because it's really hard to govern a format based off such little data from your own personal play group, right? even if they've got multiple members on the committee, that's something that's just quite a tough task.
Especially if your playgroup is Sheldon's playgroup.
Wow. Okay. I guess we're just trying to cut all ties to
going there now.
Wow. Okay. Well, there goes my run for Commander Advisor Committee. It's gone.
Yeah, there goes my sponsorship opportunity. God damn.
Noobsaurus 2020 is just that's over. Okay. But it's. I just want to say a few things, a couple more things. So, there's not many members of who are tied to cEDH on this committee, which is not really surprising given the stated positions of Rules Committee members in the past. But people are sort of kind of in the competitive community reaching out to Josh from the Command Zone because he's talked about cEDH in a non-derogatory way in the past, which is kind of a really sad low bar to think that.
Wow.
Oh my God, he hasn't shit on us, so he's our guy. So, maybe Josh isn't the best person to go to. I'm sure he's open to hearing other people's perspective, but he's not necessarily completely sympathetic to competitive players. I have seen a post from Rachel Agnes, she writes for Channel Fireball, I believe, and she's written about cEDH in the past. She posted on the cEDH subreddit that she's going to try to act as a voice for some competitive players, even though she's not necessarily fully ingrained into the competitive community, but she certainly makes an effort to try and understand it, which is, better than you can say for most of the other members.
And I believe she does actually play competitive EDH.
Okay, I thought from her article that she was just delving into the format.
I think I don't want to make any sure statements, but I think she was
fair enough
becoming interested in play EDH at some point. Maybe she never actually got involved, but Rachel Agnes is definitely the most sympathetic to the cEDH cause.
Yeah, so I mean, please don't just spam Rachel with with like, oh, I want this band, blah blah blah. But it's nice that someone's going to be trying to take a competitive perspective or make sure that things don't get absolutely dicked over for competitive. That's really the best I can hope for, and I think that's the best we can all hope for, is to not absolutely get destroyed by Rules Committee. Just honestly, the status quo, not too bad. Of just no bannings for the past however many times they've announced it.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how terrible everybody that currently plays the format thinks it is, I feel like we're actually in a fairly okay spot right now.
It could be much worse.
Considering that the ban list is being managed by people who don't care about the format at all, I feel like we could definitely be in a worse place than we currently are.
One brief thing I want to mention, because they talked about this on the Command Zone as something the Rules Committee has brought up in the past, is the Rules Committee has brought up about fixing fetch lands where they wouldn't want you'd be able to use off-color fetches. So that means in Gitrog, you would be able to use only Verdant Catacombs, down from 7 fetches to 1. So that is something that I think should be strongly advocated against, because that would be awful for competitive. It's way over centralizing of the more colors, right? 5 color has access to great mana fixing, and you tainted all of a sudden all tainted decks. It's way harder to run if you're on a lesser mana base. I think that's something. My understanding is that's something they're like. They're not too interested in doing, but it has come up in the past. So hopefully, Rachel can help steer them in the right direction there.
Yeah, it
seems like a largely arbitrary decision.
Sorry?
I said it seems like a largely arbitrary decision. Fetches don't seem to really affect competitive or casual in a negative way at all. What is their reasoning?
That it's off flavor, basically.
They think it falls under the purview of color identity.
That's my understanding.
Is the justification. Although that raises the question of, can I play Farseek in a deck that isn't 5 colors then? It specifically names swamp, mountain, island, or plains.
Yeah. There's some hopefully questions like that are too difficult for them to make the switch.
Yeah, I think that change would just be it's sort of like the opposite of what you want, where it just ends up hurting all the low color decks.
Yeah. Which
Which
not
is like
something
the exact opposite of what you want to be doing if you wanted to be hitting mana bases in the format.
But that's not the perspective they're not trying.
No,
to
not at all. But like just sort of like as the effects of what would happen.
It wouldn't be a change for balance. It'd be a change for flavor, which is obviously can have bad.
Well, it would be a change for balance. That just wouldn't be the purpose.
So if anyone has anything else to say on this, say it now. Otherwise, we can move on to discussion of cards from RNA.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like they're putting. Another thing they mentioned in the Star City Games article is this thing called the cEDH Charter, which is like an internal document. So I'm kind of curious to know, or like, see what the result of that will be.
Oh, like
near
they
the
post it? Yeah.
I hope when they say internal, they don't mean
essentially.
secret.
So me too. Outlining guiding principles and expectations. So, essentially, confirming assumptions is what I see.
I have heard that a lot of the people or a few people that I've heard from who are on the advisory committee, from their own content, that they are aiming to be more transparent, and this is a move from the RC to try and improve transparency, which I think is a move in the right direction for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
And the one other thing I wanted to say is that, while I don't think any of the cards that are going to be up for consideration will have huge splashes in competitive, I'm excited because I think a lot of the people on this advisory group are actually going to be promoting unbans rather than bans. And I think if you look at the Commander ban list, a lot of it is sort of historical and
hashtag free primetime.
A lot of they took Protean Hulk off that list, and I think that there's a lot of cards that could do with some reevaluation along the lines of Protean Hulk. So maybe we get to play with Primetime or Recurring Nightmare or
everyone spam that to all the
Coalition Victory
members and all the rules committee members. Hashtag free Primetime. That way we can make sure it never gets unbanned. You just annoy them so.
Can I get a Sylvan Primordial unban? Maybe even a Sundering Titan unban? Is that asking for too much?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I just want to have a way to nuke everybody else's mana bases, okay? It's not that bad.
Dude, casual all-star. Sylvan Primordial.
Ooh. Trade secrets unbanned.
Please never. Please never.
Fun games.
And just to let everyone know, if you were hoping for a balanced unban, Sheldon has said that if they were to unban cards one by one, Survivor style, balance would be the last card standing.
I'm glad. I'm honestly glad.
Yeah, I think we're all happy about that.
Okay, so let's move on to the new cards from RNA. So let's just go one card at a time. Some of them we want to talk about more than others. So let's try to hammer out ones that we think don't merit too much discussion.
Yeah, let's get through this real quick.
So I'll start. So let's go with Light Up the Stage. Light Up the Stage reads for 2 and a red. It has Spectacle for a single red, and Spectacle means if your opponents took damage this turn, you can pay the Spectacle cost instead of its regular cost. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So kind of draw 2 for 1 if in the best case scenario, but most of the time in cEDH, especially specifically in red decks, you're not going to be hitting in for combat damage except for maybe in a few decks. So like maybe Blood Pod, where you've got creatures and you've got that red, but I don't think those decks really are starving for that kind of card draw.
I think the 2 places exactly where you might see this is like Grenzo and Mono Red Neheb, and that's about it.
Yeah, I don't think like things like Godo want this.
Particularly with Grenzo, it was pointed out that this, if you have a way to reliably trigger Spectacle, this is a very efficient Doomsday pile cracker.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
cost
true.
5 off ad nauseum like Gush, and it doesn't need you to have 2 islands. And the other thing that's really cool with it is if you hit, for example, LED and Yawgmoth's Will, you can
You don't.
cast the
Yeah.
LED and activate it and not be unable to cast your
Oh, that's
Yawgmoth's Will
cute.
or whatever
That's
it is
really
you want
cute.
to cast.
Yeah,
Because it's in exile, not in your
I
hand.
could see that. That's neat. Interesting. But yeah, I don't think this is going to make too much of a splash. You're not going to see it in too many decks.
No, I don't think you're seeing it in most things.
Next, so I'll also cover this one, although we'll spin it around the table for the few. But Electro Dominance. This reads for X double red. Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So this apparently like really interesting brews in modern, but not super interesting in cEDH. Just a fireball with X and some upside. You're not really casting Wheel of Fate because you can't have that. You can't have those 0 mana costs cards consistently. But where this might see play is in Zada, and I've talked to Wedge, who's or people might not know, is the curator of the current decklist database list for Zada. Whether or not he would be including this in his Zada list, he said probably not. It's the most comparable card is Kerizev's Expertise, but because you have to target Zada with this, you're going to be blowing up all of your own tokens. So it's kind of already win more. If you've already got a full board of tokens, you can use this to generate a massive amount of mana. And it's it can see play, but you're just doing a lot of juggling to make this work. So right now, not in his list, but could potentially see play.
You could play it.
I think a notable commander is Mizzix with Electro Dominance because it lets you use Mizzix's ability to reduce the cost of non-instant sorcery spells.
That is a thing, actually.
Because the condition on Electro...
Or reduce colored mana.
And also win at instant speed.
Yes. But I think probably the biggest thing with Mizzix is being able to use red rituals to fuel Electro Dominance to cast like blue cards. Because I know a lot of the time that like Mizzix can have problems with actually like having enough blue mana to cast stuff. So I think you could
I am actually
in Yidris because
yes,
definitely
because
you're playing the 0 mana cards anyway. So you just play it. You just bank. Oh no! Look, I drew my Wheel of Fate. Well, if I just have a tutor, I can cast the Wheel of Fate. Easy.
Do you really want to hit Electro Dominance off your Yidris Cascade?
No, but like if you draw it,
no.
Think about it. If you draw
but,
it,
yeah, I guess it does.
Wheel of Fate.
Yeah, I guess. But also, you're running Electro Dominance, which for the most part is going to do nothing.
I think this card might actually be a little bit better than you're giving it credit for. I'm gonna try it in Kess. I suspect it won't wind up working.
Oh wow.
In Kess, yeah. I think that the big difference between it and a card like Kerizev's Expertise is the fact that it is an instant, and sometimes you can get people by flashing things in when they're not expected.
Thoughtseize the Hulk player at instant speed with flash on the stack. Get him.
Thoughtseize the Hulk player at instant speed Curse Totem, End Step Helm of Awakening.
Seems like such a dream, man. It seems like you just want to be running Vidalcan Orrery.
Yeah, but now your Curse Totem can be dispelled.
Vidalcan Orrery is that's going to be banned, right?
You want your deck. You want your
now
deck
that Josh is on the
play no good cards.
Okay, I feel like we've spent too much time on Electro Dominance for the impact this card we expect. Okay, so Spleen, do you want to get the next one?
Sure. Let's look at Font of Agonies. So Font of Agonies is an enchantment that casts for a single black mana, and it says whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies, which I believe is a new counter type, so that's cool. And then it has 1 and a black, remove 4 blood counters from Font of Agonies, destroy target creature. So, the obvious things to note right away, you don't have to sacrifice it, you can use it more than once. and the destroy is unrestricted, whereas most of those effects say non-black or non-artifact or something like that.
I think the only really notable enabler for this is Necropotence and Zur, because it's an enchantment that you can fetch. But I don't even think people have talked about it on the server, just the Discord server for Zur. Super appropriate name. Great. But
I feel like you ruined that joke as soon as you explained it.
Just in case people didn't realize it, but just for any of our other listeners out there who might not be on the Discord all the time. But yeah, Font of Agony is fetchable with Zur, Necropotence fetchable with Zur, but people have talked about it saying it seems really, really mediocre.
I mean, technically, Timna turns it on because
and Sylvan Library.
Sylvan Library.
And
fetch lands.
I feel like you're looking for
Confluence.
commanders, though, and it's probably like Zur and to a lesser degree Timna. Where like Timna could actually add multiple counters at once, right? So it's not actually that bad. Because if you hit like 2 people, you get 2 counters. If you hit 3 people, you get 3 counters. But like,
it just seems like not the
like, why am I paying 3 mana to kill the first creature, and then 2 mana for every creature,
and putting work to get those counters too,
or below rate,
right?
Yeah. Like you have to be slapping people every turn consistently with Timna to get that.
Okay. I don't think there's much else to say about this card.
Yeah, doesn't seem too great.
Okay, moving on to the next, I guess, sort of medium card we're going to talk about, and that's Shimmer of Possibility. Noel, do you want to cover this one?
Yep, sure. So, 1 in a blue for a sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Doesn't seem like many decks are really struggling for these kinds of effects. If you're looking for cheap card advantage, sure.
We're not even card selection.
Yeah,
it
doesn't really.
Selection, really.
Card select. Yeah, sure.
People already,
selection.
The most comparable card is Impulse, right? And that's an instant speed, and that's not even seeing play in every deck. Yeah. That can.
Like,
I think for me, this card, the comparison is either Anticipate, which in most decks that would want more than just Impulse. I think I'd rather have Anticipate because it's an instant.
Yeah.
Or I also don't think it compares too favorably to some of the more restricted ones, like is it Peer Through Depths? Whichever the one that you look at 5 and take an instant or sorcery. I always forget which of those 3 cards has which effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's got Splice and Arcane.
Wow.
I think
there's arcane spells that see play.
This could see play in like.
Oh no, it's just Arcane. It's just Arcane.
I feel like this could see play in exactly like Brawl, specifically, just because you need a way to like both find counter magic and eventually your win con on whenever eventually you decide you want to win the game.
I mean, fair enough. Sees play in a single deck, worth it. It's not bad selection.
So I guess that also applies to Jace.
It's just
like
super
Prince Prodigy.
Great. It's just like, wow, I really don't want to be paying 2 mana to cantrip.
I mean, that's exactly what Brawl is for.
Well,
right?
That's sorcery speed.
It's at rate. It's just a sorcery.
Okay.
Really? Would you say that Impulse is a good rate in cEDH?
No.
I think Impulse is a perfectly fine card.
Sees the correct amount of play right now.
Impulse is on the low end of playable.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, fair. Let's move on.
Jump on to the next one.
Yeah, sick. When you get this one?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do Wilderness Reclamation, the Scourge of Standard. Wilderness Reclamation is 3 and a green enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Wow, look, guys, it's a worse Seaborn Muse.
Yes, it is.
It's a much worse.
Do you know how many decks play Seaborn Muse?
Very few. Yes, and
exactly
4-color Rashmi control decks. I guess some Tasker decks are like 3.
Just like 3. And
okay, but hear me out. If I can flip my search for Kanta.
Man, this ain't standard. This ain't standard.
You see, if I can consistently flip a fucking Nexus of Fate off the top of my library every turn, then I can effectively build my own Seaborn Muse.
Yeah. The fact not going to see play in Yisan because it doesn't untap your creatures, so not
It's also an
great.
enchantment.
And
Also-
it also isn't a
Wait,
creature.
sorry. What are the types on Yisan? Could you remind me? He's a legendary
Yes,
creature,
yes,
was it?
exactly. Typed creature.
Not a land.
um,
Oh,
Hey,
Not yet.
if you go take, what is it, Sylvan, the 3 mana, you just, or okay, Trapped in the Moon. If somebody traps in the moon, imprison the moon,
Imprison
your
in the
Yisan,
moon?
you get to untap your Yisan with it.
dude, yeah, you just
Or,
Song of the Dryads, yeah.
He's play main deck Song of the Dryad, perfect. But yeah, I guess the best decks would potentially be like 4-color Rashmi or Tasker, where you have more lands and you're just trying to control the board. But
And I can't exactly speak for Tassiger, but my god, get this away from my 4-color Rashmi deck.
yeah, okay.
I want it out.
I think that's all that needs to be said for Wilderness Reclamation. Okay, so I'll hop on to the next one, which is Incubation Druid. It's for 1 and a green. Add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead. And it also has Adapt for 3 and 2 green. So it has Adapt 3 for 3 and 2 green, which means you can pay that cost and put 3 +1/+1 counters on it. I'm pretty sure the only reason this has seen discussion is for Hulk piles, if I'm correct.
Yep, it is a combo with Vigin,
4-color
Graph Mage,
Rashmi?
and Torch Courier, where it comes into play, Vigin, Graph Mage grafts a counter onto it, and then makes it untap with Torch Courier, giving it haste, make infinite mana.
And out of all the Hulk piles that currently exist, where would you place this one?
Pretty low on the list. I mean, it's effectively a direct replacement to the Pillow Palette pile, which was not really seeing much play in the first place. Notably, this one does have a backup combo with Bloom Tender, though, where you can play them both in the same deck, and if you're either
freed from the
missing
real.
Incubation,
Yeah.
well, if you're missing Incubation Druid, then you can actually do it with, if you have a Timna out, you can do it with Bloom Tender instead,
Oh, okay.
where you
Yeah.
go get Bloom Tender instead of the Incubation Druid, and then it makes you infinite non-blue mana.
how do I have Timna in a deck that's running Flash and
That's a
Incubation
question.
And,
Druid?
yeah. Because if
Also
you're making
Torch
infinite mana,
Courier.
you're probably playing Thrasios out of the
Yes.
partners. So, yeah.
You could
Okay,
do it,
well-
you could do it with Sliver Queen.
You could do
You
it.
could
with
do it
Sliver.
with Sliver Queen.
You just have to have
Good
the
to
Sliver
know.
Queen already out on the board.
Yeah.
I actually I don't hate it. I think it's like the fact that it becomes it taps for 3 mana is a lot. Yes, the 5 is a steep cost to pay, and it's not a good mana dork until you do pay that. But it does have it provides the same role as Bloom Tender in the Freed from the Real combo, and block stuff. I wouldn't put it in most decks.
Where would you
but
put it?
I'm testing it in 4-color Rashmi.
Really?
It actually has performed surprisingly well.
Well, because you can
But-
adapt it instant speed, which is notable, which lets you
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
use it as a pseudo mana sink, where you stick it early as sort of a shitty 2-drop dork, but later on it can turn into a single card win with Paradox Engine or Isochron Scepter.
2 mana dorks already suck.
Also the two toughness is nice just for the first, like, the turn where they play Timna and attack with their mana dorks. The fact that you can block a mana dork and not have it die is just
I
kind of
think the place where this is going to see big play in the future is once we get a commander that can actually consistently put 1/1 counters on things. And
Dude,
put like
already
things
is, Rayhan.
consistently on from
Like
the
Gabe,
blind,
what
like
do you-
not
come-
proliferating or whatever.
Eminence.
but
Eminence.
just
yeah.
having say like a 2-mana commander that synergizes well with +1/+1 counters and like just like puts one on something for free. I think that's where you're going to see this thing, but there's just not
Until we
really,
get that, yeah.
there's not really a space for it right
so
now.
Rishkar.
Rishkar, if
So
yours in
Rayhan.
bug, yes.
Okay,
All right.
next one, Spleen. Do you want to cover I guess so. We're trying to cover the ones that don't really have that we're not going to talk about too much. I think this next one shouldn't be talked about too much. That's Rhythm of the Wild, Spleen.
Yeah. So it's an enchantment that casts for 1, a red and a green. It says creature spells you control can't be countered. And it says non-token creatures you control have riot, which means they enter the battlefield with your choice of haste or a +1/+1 counter. So I think the can't be countered text is, for me at least, why this card is even up for discussion. I can't think of a deck that actually wants to spend the 3 mana it takes to cast this, and unlike something like Vexing Shusher, which in and of itself can't be countered, this can be, so if you're trying to use it to force stuff through, they'll just counter this. But in a sufficiently slow meta, I could see the fact that if you can jam it early, you can force through counter spells, and sometimes if your Tim is a 3/3 and theirs is a 2/2, you get profitable.
It feels like a card that it's not doing. Obviously, it can't. If it was the best rate for each of these effects, that'd be insane. But you have to be wanting to utilize all aspects of this card to want to run this over one of the comparable cards that has one of the effects more narrow, but one of the sub effects, but is cheaper. Right? There's already it's for 1 and a red is an enchantment, I believe, that gives all your creatures haste, right?
Well, there's also a just red enchantment and a just green enchantment that give your creatures haste.
No, that gives everything haste.
Well, but those give everyone's creatures haste.
Yeah,
I'm
very
assuming if you're playing them, then you're the person at the table that's going to be taking advantage of that haste the best.
I mean, when everyone's on green, that's sort of hard.
This is also true.
So I think that's the most comparable is the one that's for, I forget the card's name, but I think it's 1 and a red. All your creatures have haste.
I thought it's an aura. It's like something of the War Mind or something like that. I don't think it's a global enchantment. I think it's an aura.
Ashling's Prerogative is what is it?
I don't know, man. I don't think it matters too much. But also the creatures you control can't be countered. Obviously, the better effect there is Vexing Shusher that can grant any spell you control to be uncountered. Is also uncounterable itself. You've also got what is it? Guy's Herald, which is creature spells can't be countered. That's for everyone.
Prowling Serpapod.
Prowling Serpapod is not really a better rate. That's why it's like that's why I didn't really.
Cavern of Souls.
Yeah, lots of better effects.
I think the one place this would exist, if it was a bit better, would be Druid decks, where you just go like, okay, Hermit Druid uncounterable, give it haste activated. And that would be really good if you didn't also have to cast a Dread Return after that.
Yeah, or the fact that you're casting this for 3 mana and then doing your Hermit Druid shenanigans.
Well,
I feel like you're just better off casting the Hermit Druid.
I feel like that's like pretty insane, actually, where like it doesn't actually matter that this is 3 mana, because you can actually sort of use it as like a grindy win con if you didn't have to cast the Dread Return, because you just go like 3 mana whatever, and then you have this 2 mana uncounterable thing that they can't even remove, because as soon as they have a chance to remove it, it's already been activated because it has haste.
Yeah, I don't know. Seems kind of like a dream.
I did check. There is no global enchantment for 2 mana that gives all your creatures haste. Emblem of the Warmind is an aura that goes on a creature, so that creature is vulnerable. So it is the best rate for a one-sided haste.
Are you sure, man?
I mean,
yes.
I feel like there's one, but I don't want to get too bogged down in this. Yeah. Let's just move on. If that's fine with everyone. Okay. Yeah. The next one, Null, do you want to cover this?
Yeah, sure. So Cindervines is a red and a green enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervines deals 1 damage to that player, and it also has 1 sacrifice. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cindervines deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. Yeah, non-creature spell hate in colors that has it. So I'm like not particularly impressed. I think if you're going down this route, you're looking at Rurik Thar, which already is a powerful effect in this.
There's a 2-mana
category.
enchantment that's like so there's Eidolon of Rhetoric, or not Eidolon of Rhetoric, sorry, Eidolon of the Great Revel, which has that non-creature hate for 2 mana. And then there's another. There's a God, I can't remember its name, but it's for 1 and a red. Spell Shock.
Spell Shock. No, or
Pyrostatic
Pillar.
That's
one of those two.
Spell Shock.
Yeah.
Spell Shock is 3 mana, right?
Yeah. Spell Shock is
Yeah,
any
okay.
spell.
Like
Pyrostatic
Campbell
Pillar is any spell
as
3 or
well.
less.
Oh, true, Kimball. But I
guess what's nice is like it is this taxing effect. It's the taxing effect plus the ability that it can just be turned into a removal spell.
I feel
I think is fine.
it just doesn't tax life totals hard enough. Like, I'm perfectly okay paying like 5 mana into this on a storm turn before I find my removal spell.
I mean, it taxes randomly. It's good against random, like not random things. It's good against very specific things, is what I should say. Shimmerzer, that's annoying.
Yeah, it's good against ad nauseum.
It's also like the fact that it can just
many things are good against ad naus, though, is the point.
no, but
Yeah.
it's also just something that's good against ad nauseum or Shimmerzer that just has another mode that makes it useful, right? Like this can stop.
the thing that
I guess it doesn't matter if you're against Isochron, Isorev, because you're just going to blow up the Isochron Scepter in response.
Yeah, that was what made me not love this card, was the fact that the thing that is most impacted by the ping, which is Dramatic Scepter, is already hit by the seal effect, and it's a bad seal. Like, if I wanted to play Seal of Primordium, I'd play Seal of Primordium.
It's definitely an overcosted artifact or enchantment removal
Yeah,
spell.
that's
Yeah.
my view on this. Is like it's a 3 mana artifact or enchantment removal spell that also coincidentally has this tax effect.
Yeah,
And seals will already hit. Like, Seal of Primordium doesn't guarantee that you beat Shimmerzer, but definitely seems like a pretty
And
good
also,
card to
like,
have.
What even
Already.
plays seals at this point, right? Like, you have like Muldrotha exactly, and that's
Muldrotha,
about all
yeah.
you're
Yeah, Muldrotha
Muldrotha
only.
can't even play Cinder Mines.
Yes.
yeah,
That's
fair
great.
enough. Okay, and then the last card that got a lot of buzz, but I don't think it's worth talking about too much. Sick, do you want to cover this one?
Man, are we gonna get
Yeah.
backlash for that?
Wow.
Shots fired.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's a heavy
all right.
stance.
Remember, when this is
from one of
6
our
card,
members.
you should only send all your messages to
Uh-huh.
him, all your hate mail to him. Okay.
So we're gonna talk about Lavinia, I guess, because this is my duty now. So this is Lavinia Azorius Renegade, cast for a white and a blue. It's a legendary creature, human soldier. Soldier's a relevant card type. Can't forget about that. It's sort
Is
of
it?
Warrior is
like
relevant.
a,
Soldier's
like a
not
soldier
relevant.
tribal, right? Or is it warrior?
Legacy
Soldier tribal.
soldier.
Is it warrior tribal?
No, it's
Okay.
Warrior Tribal. Najila and
Okay,
Mindblade
well, that
Render
makes
are
it
Warrior
worse.
Tribal.
In any case, its effect reads:
This has gone down.
I know
well.
the pain of Anaphyns being a soldier. Not a
each
warrior.
opponent cannot cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. And then, whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. And she's a 2/2. So big one here: combos with Knowledge Pool in the command zone. Sort of ish. Also, combos sort of with what Omen Machine. I think there are a couple of other ones. Point is, the combos with a bunch of 6 mana cards that are pretty much nigh uncastable.
It's a good summary.
And when you're playing it as a hate bear in the 99, from what I've witnessed of it, it's sort of like a bad defense grid. Because I saw it out when like some other people had Force of Wills in hand, and it stopped them from stopping somebody else trying to go off. It just wasn't a good time. I don't know.
Also, like it's late to the party in terms of stopping people's mana crypts, like their opening mana crypts. unless you're accelerating your Lavinia in with like Lotus Petals or Mox Diamond or something.
To be fair, it doesn't stop the mana crypts, but it stops what the mana crypts are accelerating into. A lot of the time.
Yeah.
So like it won't stop like the mana crypt plus first rock, but it will stop every rock after that point,
It's
or
also
every spell trying to be cast after
non-creature spells, right?
Yes.
That sucks.
the big problem with Lavinia on the tag, like the counter free spells is sort of marginal. It's not what you're playing. It's not what you're playing the card for, right? Like it's like sure, like it shuts off.
No,
Scepter.
my submerge. Massacre.
It shuts off Scepter. Whatever.
Okay, let me massacre.
Right, everything shuts off Scepter. You can shut down Scepter with a wet piece of toast. What you're really playing this card for, or what you're really excited for, is they can't cast stuff that's greater than the number of lands they control. Problem with that is that you're not casting fat stuff in cEDH. Like, nobody's deck has more than a couple of really expensive cards they actually plan on casting.
And the things that are fat are creatures.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop people from casting the cantrips to dig through the removal to remove Lavinia in case it is shutting off their combo.
Or to just dig for land drops.
That too. Just like activating Thrasios every turn and hitting land drops, or just doing whatever.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if you were looking to include her in a hate bear filled list, a lot of those lists run some cards that make the counter free spells clause even worse than it already is, because if you have a Thalia out, their spells aren't free anymore.
Yeah. Also, it just gets outclassed by so many other similarly costed bears.
It's also that's such a huge tick against her as your own like standalone commander, is that you can't play tax effects because then your win cons don't work.
Oh man.
She does also counter Dread Return.
She does, but again,
play against
what
breakfast
stacks
yes.
piece doesn't stop breakfast.
Do you know what's better than Lavinia that also counters Dread Return? Yixilid Jailer. And that
you know what's even better than that?
play.
Just playing Rest in Peace. Just playing a Grafdigger's Cage.
Yeah, it's not a great card.
Lavinia doesn't stop the Hulk trigger, and as we all know, when you don't stop the Hulk trigger, you're not stopping Hulk.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say on Lavinia, or can we move on to the actual good cards to discuss?
No.
Just remember to leave your hate in the not my inbox, in everybody else's inbox about that one.
Okay. So I'll kick things off with the card that I'm perhaps most excited about from the set. And these are the cards we're going to talk about, a bit more in depth. And that's Verity Circle. And Verity Circle is for 2 and a blue. It's an enchantment, and it reads: whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And it also has the ability 4 and a blue, tap target creature without flying. And this is, I think, one of the. It's nice to see another source of persistent card advantage, or pseudo stacks. We've talked about this in the past with Rhystic Study, where it's pretty much always going to have like the worst mode. So it's either going to be a tax effect when you don't want it to be, or it's going to be a card advantage effect when you don't want it to be, which isn't always a bad thing. If its worst case is a tax effect or card advantage, that's probably good. That's probably fine enough. And I think Verity Circle is going to have the same thing, where mana dorks or creatures with activated abilities that require tapping, they're just not going to activate them. It's going to be a pseudo curse totem, or it's going to be drawing you cards. And I think this is something that lots of control decks have been looking for, or at least they're eager to include as part of their card advantage engines.
I think the best parallel with is none of the cards you mentioned. Actually, I think it resembles most Compost, where in your pod it's gonna be relevant for one of the players, and you're gonna benefit extremely off of it.
Yeah, I think Verity Circle.
It's comparable to that, yeah, and also Runic Armosaur. It's kind of like.
I've seen Compost win people games. I've seen Compost win people games, and I think the condition is just as easy to.
I have no clue.
Null has seen Spleen. Spleen win lots of games with Compost, as have I. Compost,
and then I've seen those players also not win very many games. There you go.
Hurtful.
I feel like Null's actually onto something here, where I think Verity Circle actually, counterintuitively, will probably get better for you the less people are affected by it. Because the fewer and fewer people that are actively utilizing mana dorks means that they don't want to be mana taxed by the Verity Circle because it's not taxing anybody else. So they're going to be encouraged to just play through the card advantage end of it and just
Yeah, the one person with dorks goes, well, I can't afford to not
exactly.
use
I think
these.
dorks are already in that position. I think it's unlike Runic Armasaur where it's not taxing dorks. It's the Runic Armasaur, you're going to get things off like fetches and random other cards, but Verity Circle, people are going to be using their dorks. I think it's a hard ask to get someone to not use their dorks, especially when so many decks are built around that. One thing is that unlike Mystic Remora, people can't wait it out. Right? It's not just people can't be like, okay, everyone, just agreed, let's not feed the fish, and we're just going to wait till this thing dies. Verity Circle isn't going away, right? So people either have to hit out of these with lands, just land drops, which is not ideal, or they're just going to have to suck it up, which is, I think, what's going to happen with Verity Circle.
I think we're probably
It's kind of a funny mana sync with like Paradox Engine,
oh god, don't even.
where you can like tap your own creatures.
Dude,
Come on,
the
you
card
can
that
tap your own
Del Rey is
Thrasios.
looking for. Actually, though, no, like seriously,
Oh, true.
like
That's,
it's actually. By the way, yeah, just putting this out there.
Yeah,
to all
actually,
the
yeah.
Derevi people, it is disgusting with Derevi because you hit somebody however many times, tap all their creatures. Oh, hey, look, that all the creatures are tapped. Just untap and retap one and draw more cards.
Okay, but if I wanted to play Edric, I would just play.
I want this in my
yeah.
Zur deck that's kind of like a hybrid between Shimmer and Control Zur as a source of card advantage. I want this in Control Tasigur. I think this probably slots into Rashmi. Is that correct? Rashmi players?
Yeah.
Four-color Rashmi players.
I think,
Yeah, definitely.
I've been talking it over with Siggy a bit. I think Spleen might have come to the same conclusion that Armasaur is a big booty, and he's really good at blocking Temna, but he's actually not that great at generating cards. So this might be something that I'm looking to slot in over it as an like actual more consistent card generator.
Yeah, Armasaur has. I haven't been thrilled with Armasaur, and I know you laughed about the activated ability, but I do think, particularly in some of the maybe less optimal strategies like Baral or JVP, I think that ability is not irrelevant. Like sometimes paying 5 mana to draw a card is better than
Not drawing the
holding
card.
up a counter spell, not having anything to counter, and
It's
like it's a fringe situation, but like I don't think it's an irrelevant line of text.
it's
I don't
like
think you
it's
can
a
ignore it.
bad Thrasios activation stapled onto a card advantage engine for decks that don't have Thrasios. I can see that.
Yeah, I like Verity Circle. I think it's going to see a fair amount of play. Actually, I think it's going to see the most play out of any of the cards from this set. That's my prediction.
The most? Oh no!
Wow.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no.
I'm sorry. No, I like it. I think it's a good card, but no.
Okay, what do you think is going to see more play?
I think we're coming up on one right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a hot take. Okay,
Uh-huh.
I've got
Yep.
some shit to say about this card. Okay, so
really?
just
Okay.
let's just jump right into it. Okay.
Okay. All right. This is Smothering Tithe. It costs 3 and a white. It is an enchantment. It reads: whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add a mana of any color. Basically, whenever anybody draws a card, you get a Lotus Petal.
Unless you're
That
in a
seems okay.
Unless people are
situation
willing
where
to
everyone
pay
has mana
2
and
mana
no one has
every time
cards.
they draw a card.
So what you're saying is that in the first turn cycle round, it's basically like a sort of tapped, sort of untapped Thran Dynamo.
It's a 4 mana Gilded Lotus.
Gilded Lotus. I guess, yeah, because of
with,
colors.
With the bankable mode, where you get to
But
bank
it's not.
the mana
It's
every
not
turn.
4 mana Gilded Lotus, because Gilded Lotus comes into play untapped, and you can't utilize the mana the turn Smothering Tithe comes down. In fact, Smothering Tithe comes down. In fact, you can't use any of that mana until it comes. You can't use all of that mana until it comes all the way back around to your turn.
Yes, but that's offset by the fact that they're Lotus Petals. You can bank them. So you get to go 3 mana first turn
no.
cycle. Oh, I didn't have to use all of them because I untapped. I get 6 mana the next turn cycle. You just get to keep banking all this mana. Not
And
even
you've got all that
touching.
mana.
They're also all different colors, right? Gilded Lotus is a single color.
Yeah,
like
this
these
is
are all
also
different
gets a tab
colors.
for different colors. this isn't even touching the fact that this is the most disgusting card in the world with wheels.
I think there's a more disgusting card. It's called Notion Thief.
Notion Thief's pretty good, but we weren't expecting to ever get another Notion Thief. This is the Notion Thief that generates mana instead.
I'm sorry, we got another Notion Thief, and it's called Alms Collector. Okay.
Okay.
Alms Collector's no joke.
I guarantee you, I've played more games with Alms Collector than any of you combined, and it is not even close.
No, I know. Just for the listeners, in case it wasn't obvious. Alms Collector is not that comparable to Notion Thief. It is just very underwhelming having played with it myself.
It's sort of like comparing Wilderness Reclamation to
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, Smothering Tithe is going to see play in stupid amounts of PST variants. And man variants. Just like anything that wants to play anything close to a base.
Why does PST want this?
Because first of all, you generate way too much mana in the late game with this, and the fact that you're playing Wheels and Notion Thief anyway just makes it so much better.
No, I don't think so. I think PST
scenario,
it doesn't tap, dude. I think you'd rather run something that actually can net mana with your the taps for mana with your scepter, it's Dramatic Scepter, right? Like this doesn't combo with your Dramatic Scepter.
You're playing enough of those anyway. You don't need more things that combo with Scepter. Everything combos with Scepter.
It's 4 mana, man. I don't know. This seems. It seems like that you guys are evaluating this based off the dream.
That is your. By the way, no. That is your base case. 4 mana generate 3 mana by your next turn is the base case. That's not even counting playing against something like Gitrog.
Yeah, Thran Dynamo doesn't see play, man, except in like decks that absolutely need it.
Imagine jamming this into a fucking Mystic Remora. Imagine playing Smothering Tithe against 4-color Rashmi. Oh my god.
I think there's.
That happened.
Was it okay? I haven't faced Smothering Tithe yet. Have you guys who have faced against it or played with it? Has it been as amazing as you guys are saying?
I haven't played with it yet.
It was terrifying. I was scared. Like a wheel was cast. It was like it wound up that it was able to be destroyed in response to the wheel. But I'm convinced if we hadn't been able to destroy it, we would have lost.
Like noobs, you're not even thinking. Like consider Timna and Thrasios existing. The fact that this like gets to piggyback off of other people just like doing the things they normally do in a game with drawing cards off of Timna is just so good.
I feel like it's almost like win more though.
But it's
right?
not,
Like
if you power a Smothering Tithe out on turn 1 or 2, just the amount of mana that it generates to fuel later plays is going to be stupid.
Dude, else would do that? Thran Dynamo, Ramsey for 3.
Yeah,
like
yeah. That's the Smothering Tithe's base case.
But you can wait. You can play this on turn 2 and then still counter something or like keep up like you have interaction.
What if Thran Dynamo have Belgian Crufix?
You have 1 mana interaction on the following turn and then 2 mana interaction on the next turn, which that's
is good enough.
Yeah. So if the person immediately after you in turn order doesn't draw any extra cards, like Ponder or anything like that,
they didn't play Timna.
You have only 1 mana interaction, and they didn't play Timna. Yeah. Then the next person after that, you have your whole suite of interaction, basically, like any counter.
Maybe I'm being too harsh, but even if I was to go up in my evaluation, I don't think this card is insane. I think this card is kind of fine.
Noobs,
I just don't think
imagine
it's
playing against a Smothering Tithe when you're on Gitrog. Imagine how shitty that feels when they're making a minimum of 2 mana off your turn. Not even counting you like fetching. Like
if I'm doing fetch stuff,
I'm gonna go fetch and draw a card, and they just keep making mana off of this.
You're still limited by the amount of interaction you have in hand.
Right? But you can use mana for more than interaction though. Like the point is, all this mana gets banked for their next turn. So, I'm gonna do my Gitrog thing where I set up for a win next turn. I'm gonna play Bazaar Baghdad, draw 3 cards. Oh yeah, that just gives them Ad Naus mana for the next turn. Like they just get a free Ad Naus now. Or they just get a free Thrasios activation that they didn't have before. Or, I'm just going to sit on that mana that you gave me and just use it later when I actually need it.
I don't know. I guess I'm going to hold my position at least until I play against this some more and see it in action. I get all of these scenarios, but I don't know. I guess I have to see how it changes the game dynamic once it hits the field.
the other thing that separates this from a card like Thran Dynamo, besides all the other stuff that's already been described, is that you get to keep mana even after, like, if it does get destroyed.
Yeah,
That's also a big one.
that's
Like,
not
you
nothing.
get to keep your
Fair enough.
Lotus Petal.
Yeah, but if you got a ton of mana banked up, it's like you're not really struggling. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily it's the most appealing feature about it.
No, certainly not. But it's something that is worth
It's
considering.
a factor.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Spleen, you want to cover this one, buddy?
Yeah. Last
Been
card on our
All
list.
right,
Last card on our list.
I'm surprised that this will most likely not be the most controversial card we're going to talk about, but it is Prime Speaker Vannifar. So Wizards has printed a revolutionary creature type combination. She is a legendary creature, Elf Ooze Wizard. Ooze Wizard? What? Elf Ooze? I don't.
Still waiting for
Anyway.
a wizard.
She casts for 2. There is a lizard.
There is a lizard
Waiting to
wizard.
get on that.
Yeah.
She casts for 2, a green and a blue. She is a 2/4, which is actually quite a nice stat line.
2/4 is a pretty big booty.
Yeah, that's quite nice.
For an ability-based commander. And she has tap. Sacrifice another creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost, and put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle and activate this only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So,
Where have I seen this effect before?
I believe it has the exact same text as Birthing Pod.
Some old card
which-
banned in Modern, right?
Oh, yeah. What
Yeah.
is Birthing Pod doing, really? Let's be honest.
Yeah, so, couple obvious differences. She's a creature, so she is affected by summoning sickness. But she does not cost mana to activate, which means that your chains don't have to be kept nearly as short as they do with Birthing Pod. So she there's been a lot of brewing done. I don't think lists are settled yet, but it is surprisingly easy to chain into some sort of win with this effect. I guess it's not that surprising.
How many slots are in
I think
your
this is
dedicated to combo in your deck?
This is a good
by the way?
segue. This is a good segue into our next sort of topic, which is untap and win commanders. She is a commander that if you untap with her, and people don't remove her or silence you or whatever, 99% of the time you can win the game.
And I mean,
You can win through silence, right? You've
and
got
there are
all creature abilities.
Depends on when
Dude,
you're
the
silenced.
real
and
thing
what
that
you
will
have
stop
in play.
Vannifar is abeyance. Get him.
just fucking
Abeyance
dumb.
stops abilities. Abeyance. Get all your copies of Abeyance now.
And
Dude,
let's
it's gonna
just be clear.
skyrocket.
Like, untap and win commanders aren't exactly a revolutionary new thing. Like, these have been
No.
it's been around for a while. The format is pretty well acquainted with untap win commanders. We've seen the likes of stuff like Paradox Arkham, Paradox SA, stuff like Sylvala.
Yeah.
Hackball.
So Sylvala, when we start getting into Sylvala, so Paradox Arkham and Paradox Sissay are the most comparable to Vannifar, for sure.
Those are your deterministic. I'm actually going to win when I untap.
Yeah. Tap my commander, I know what I'm doing. And then we start getting to more like sort of abstract untap and win commanders.
Well, okay, so I will say I think that both of those actually require more specific
require a bit
setup,
of setup,
than Vannifar, because like particularly with Sissay, you have to cast a Paradox Engine and then
That's
untap.
true.
And with Arkham, you have to have 2 artifact creatures and a spell you can cast, which one of the artifact creatures can be that spell still, but 2 artifact creatures in a deck that's running not actually that many artifact creatures.
It's not a lot. You generally want around 13 copies of a specific effect to consistently have access to it, and even more to have access to 2. So,
and I don't know that you can find that much room in Paradox Arkham. Like, I thought they were kind of around 12 or 13.
I don't think you can find.
Are you counting the
Artifact
lands as
Review.
well,
like anything?
and like all the other things that turn like that animate themselves?
I don't think you'll have trouble
I'm
finding
not
that
sure.
many that many copies of that type of card, but they're all really low quality.
Yes, that's for sure. Which also, just right into Vannifar. Consider low quality cards. Vannifar runs a lot.
I don't know what you're talking
I have
about.
no clue what you're talking about.
One might say that Vannifar, out of any deck that is quote unquote cEDH, has the highest density of low quality cards.
I don't know what you're talking about. I play Breaching Hippocamp in all of my decks anyway.
Bounding Krasis.
I will admit that. So yes, like it is true that you wind up running a lot of very low quality cards. But the one thing that I think separates these low quality cards from low quality cards that are typically in other builds is that most of them, not all of them, but most of the combo pieces you wind up running, drawing them actually makes it easier to combo.
Honestly, this kind of runs me Godo. In terms of card quality, like your cards your low quality cards, Godo runs a ton of like just trash ramp cards, and they're all pushing towards casting Godo and getting your ability online. But it's mostly a single focused deck on speed. You're just trying to combo as fast as you can. Vannifar obviously has some ability to act as a toolbox, which is nice, but they both run similar sort of levels of interaction, being not too much, but just enough to kind of get the job done when the rest of the deck is just focused on getting towards combo.
Yeah, now I think the 2 mana reduction in cost means that, unlike with Godo, where if you get stopped once, like if you cast Godo and it doesn't resolve, you are in a really, really bad spot.
Not so much. I think Vannifar is just like, instead of drawing cards that are you're not drawing cards that are going to accelerate you towards your commander. You're drawing quote unquote trash combo cards.
But you get mana dorks.
You do have mana dorks.
You get.
But you're not running. You're not running like the monoliths. You're not running Metalworker.
I feel like the big difference here is probably less of the actual converted mana cost. I mean, I think like it's definitely a factor, but it's more the fact that Godo is running a lot of one-shot acceleration.
Yeah.
Rather than Vannifar's.
Yeah.
Like the only acceleration I'm actually playing is like dorks and stuff that can help me to cast Vannifar the second and third time.
I mean, yes, they'll help you cast Vannifar the second and third time, but it's in Godo when you've cast Godo and it's like, oh, okay, I didn't get there this time, but then you can draw something like LED, or even you've got more one-shot acceleration in the deck that you can top into that's just fast mana. So it's not like your top decks in terms of recasting Godo, I would say, are better than your top decks of recasting Vannifar. Right? Nothing is in Vannifar. It's like a dork is going to accelerate you one. It's the same.
Well, but
as
I think
land.
it's a higher barrier because a lot more of the time you are using some sort of one-shot acceleration to cast.
Yeah,
Vannifar
so
in
from
the first
when
place.
when you're casting
Vannifar,
Godo the
Godo.
second time, you're starting from a lot lower of a point than you are from Vannifar. Where like Vannifar is like you're drawing worse ramp, but you have more ramp left over after the first cast, if that makes sense.
It does. I just think you guys are maybe putting a bit too much weight on it, because it does matter about what you have left in your deck to draw. Right? You're only going to be ramping one mana at a time off your top decks with Vannifar. You're either going to be drawing a land or a dork, right?
Well, if you have a land in hand, that's two.
Whereas in Godo, you can draw
the point I'm trying to make.
That's all I'm trying to say.
The point I'm trying to make with Godo is that if you fail to cast Godo for 6 mana, on your next turn, a lot of the time you're going to have something more akin to 4 mana than 6.
Sure.
Right, like if you cast Seething Song and then Godo gets countered, then you're still at 4 mana and you have to get up to 8 now. Whereas with Vannifar, you're at 4 and you have to get up to 6.
And also, noobs, you can. Vannifar does have big draws off the top akin to an LED. Like you can hit Karametra's Acolyte, you can hit like Bloom Tender, stuff like that. Priest of Titanium,
Priest of
all that good
Titanium.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cradle, things that double down on your dorks.
Okay. Well, let's continue. Let's
Yeah,
give Spleen give the more breakdown of
keep
Vannifar.
going a bit.
Okay. So yeah, the deck. I've been playing a version that has basically all the combo lines. Other people have been looking at sort of more restricted ones. The reason I wanted to include all the combo lines, which is either you chain untap effects like Pester, Miter, Deceiver, Exarch, Breaching Hippocamp, that sort of thing, or there's 1,000-year elixir lines where you pot into Trophy Mage and get 1,000-year elixir. The advantage I find is you can win. The version I'm on can play through at least one of Null Rod or Rest in Peace. Whereas if you only pick one line, it loses to its corresponding hate piece, or not loses to, but you have to spend. You need either extra untaps or an extra turn, so you can find something like a Reclamation Sage to get through. So my version is a Hulk version, which also has the added benefit of sometimes you Flash Hulk.
What's the Flash Hulk pile?
And also sometimes
it's Sage of Hours, right?
The Flash Hulk pile is the Azuri Claw of Progress pile, where you get a bunch of 0 drops, which is not ideal, I will certainly concede.
That's sounding an awful lot sometimes like Edric with a K.
Yeah, sometimes you Flash Hulk people, sometimes you pot into Spellseeker and then Flash Hulk people, and you can skip the whole combo. And also, what's funny is, unlike most of the other decks that people have tried, like this Azuri Flash Hulk pile is nothing new. People have played it before in various bad decks. This one, if you draw Azuri, you don't have to cry yourself to sleep.
Yeah.
Because you can just play Azuri and then chain through random things to get your experience counters and end by chaining into
you just turn
Sage
any
of Hours.
Random dork into a Sage of Hours, right?
Well, no, but you turn your dork, into a 2-drop, into a Pestermite,
get to Bellower, which gets back to Sage of Hours. Yeah.
Like, so you can just chain through 5 creatures, get 5 experience, and end up, you get Woodland Bellower back into Quirion Ranger, into Sage of Hours, or whatever it is. So, looking at it, when we compare it to the other sort of existing untap and win commanders, most notably Arkham and Sisay, you have blue, unlike Sisay, which gives you, sometimes you can protect your commander, which is really nice. This is also relevant if you compare her to Selvala. Unlike Arkham, you don't cry against Nullrod. The big disadvantage, though, is that you do get hit by Grafdigger's Cage in a way that most of these other ones don't. And Grafdigger's Cage is a very common hate piece because it's good against Hulk, obviously, and then also like Yawgmoth's Will and those kinds of storm decks.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that a lot of us are concerned about, aside from card quality issues. I mean, it's definitely evident that BSV is like she's an untapped one commander. That's like not disputable. She's like, yeah, like you let PSV untap, she's probably gonna kill you on the untap. Most of the time, not being hindered. I think a lot of the concerns that people have for her right now are just springing from the density of combo pieces in the deck. That I think they're probably going to get. That's probably going to be optimized over time, and we'll probably see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see where Vannifar ends up later on when some of these combos have gotten a little tighter.
Yeah, one of the other builds I forgot to sort of mention, like there's just like I included as many combos as I could essentially. Some people have, they focused on one or the other, which alleviates some of the card quality issues because you can run fewer, particularly if you drop the Hulk lines for Deadeye Navigator and Peregrine Drake. You don't have to run enough 0 drops to enable Izuri, which is nice. But the other sort of build that some people have looked at, I'm not sure where it wound up, is one where you skip out most of your untap effects, and then you have a 2-card combo with your commander rather than a 1-card combo with your commander. So you find there's a few effects. The 2 most obvious ones are Intruder Alarm and Thornbite Staff. So if you build your deck such that you're expecting to find one of those and then attach it to Vannifar, and then you can win by chaining through like actually good cards until you assemble your win. So that would obviously be slower because you have to find that, but you alleviate a huge amount of the card quality issues because you don't have to run Breaching Hippocamp or Fate Stitcher. Or effects like or Tidewater Minion or effects like that. Hey, Chakram Retriever does work. You can storm with that card. It just untaps your door.
Teardrop Kami, god.
Teardrop Kami's actually Teardrop Kami, Queer and Ranger, Nature's Chosen, and Instill Energy are some of the best cards in the deck because if you pot into Chakram Retriever as your 5-drop, you can cast them to untap, and then they let you untap Vannifar a second time, which means you don't have to net the untap to pod the Hulk to win.
Wait, so you're saying Vannifar plays the best of the worst cards?
Yeah, pretty much.
I can definitely see,
also,
sorry for interrupting, but I could definitely see Vannifar going, like, and yeah, I get, like, it's sort of a bit close anyway, but so the route that Momir went in, where like the combo lines started super bulky, and we just had like a bunch of unnecessary stuff in it, and like eventually just got whittled down to an actual core combo that worked pretty well and was fairly compact considering.
Yeah, when Vannifar can finally supplement some of the like frankly garbage cards with solid interaction, I can see it being quite the solid deck. Obviously, it's going to suffer from the same thing as these untapped win commanders, where they desire to take the turn off to cast their commander early because they're trying to win early, and that's not great with stack-based interaction because you don't have mana up. But and things like Sisay can usually they'll try to slam a stacks piece before they can cast their Sisay. Which helps kind of mitigate against that. But yeah, when you actually do get to it allows you to play different styles of game when you can fit in more interaction, right? You don't necessarily have to slam Vannifar as soon as you can. You can wait till later on in the game when you can hold up counter magic to protect Vannifar or to stop other people from comboing. And you just really need to get to the point in the deck where you can slot in those cards.
Yeah, a couple other things that I want to say. The first is I'm not trying to defend these cards as being actually good cards, but there is non-zero utility in some cards that actually appear basically useless. Like, for example, some of my tap and or untap effects have let me deal with things like Fate Stitcher, for example, taps Zur, and then they don't get to attack. Or you can flash in, Pestermite, and then you untap something, and you untap one of your opponent's things, and then they block a Timna, or something like that.
Do stuff like tap down an Icecrown Scepter in response to the imprint trigger. Yeah.
Yeah, tap down an Icecrown Scepter.
Yeah.
This deck has some weird tricks that are narrow and sometimes really do work.
It's almost like playing color hacks, where where they don't usually do things, but every once in a while you just get someone like hacking a natural order.
Yeah, and the other thing is that while the combo lines right now are extremely clunky, there's probably room for refinement just based on existing cards. But this is also a commander that could, at any time, could get any number of effects that would make it way more consistent and way better. I mean, obviously, if there's a way to build a blue-green Hulk pile that doesn't need,
just
the 5/0 drops that you have to run. Well, I mean, okay, so you can already spend 2 mana in blue-green to give something haste. So it feels like a start. Or sorry, like 2 of your 6 CMC to give something haste with the Thallid and Changeling.
Yeah.
So, like, if there's an efficient Hulk pile or just a couple untappers that let you take out some of the more questionable ones, every set could potentially include an effective untapper that makes this deck more consistent or better. So going into the future, these lines can only get more efficient.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with a birthing pod in general, right? And I think it's why I got banned in Modern specifically. But it sort of works to Vannifar's favor here, where they're only going to print more creatures, right? And every single creature printing has the opportunity to make pod / Vannifar just better.
Yeah, like what if they print Vannifar's equivalent of Felidar Guardian?
Yeah.
Well,
the one thing about talking about the usefulness of Birthing Pod in cEDH is that Birthing Pod doesn't really see play outside of specifically as a combo card, right? Yisan, a green toolbox deck, creature toolbox deck does not run Birthing Pod.
Well, but I mean that deck runs Null Rod and
also the thing with
I don't think it would want that even without those. Is just from my it doesn't seem to be on game plan, and it just seems like a bit too much of a cost for that effect. You're generally looking for, like, it doesn't run Eldritch Evolution most builds, mostly on natural order.
Right, but it's definitely a lot more stacksy than Prime Speaker Vannifar. If you wanted to build like a turbo Yisan deck, I could certainly see it including both of those cards.
Maybe. I don't know.
Like, it's probably better to run the stacks package and slow everyone down, but if you wanted to build that deck so that it would win as fast as possible. Also, Birthing Pod in mono green.
You lose
all of the
some of the stuff.
You lose all the untapped
anything even close.
Yeah, I don't think Yisan is at all a good parallel to Vannifar.
No. I'm not comparing Yisan to Vannifar. I'm just saying as a pod as a value deck, right? Where you might think that a creature toolbox deck like Yisan might want a value pod, but I don't think there's really any other creature toolbox decks that like maybe a Sisay or like a green-white stack space deck, and those decks aren't running Birthing Pod either.
Well, as Null can attest, Teferi can make great use of Prime Speaker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can go up the chain.
Turn all, oh god!
With your three
On
creatures.
2, Spell Seeker on 3,
Nice.
Silent Arbiter on 4, and you're good.
Get him.
But yeah,
I just wanted my commander.
Before we get off of this, though, just the one thing, it can be a bit dangerous to look at Vannifar as a value commander, like.
No, it's certainly a combo commander.
Just because, yeah.
Yisan also isn't a value commander. It's also a combo. It's a toolbox. It's a toolbox commander.
But the problem.
It's a combo commander.
The problem with Vannifar as a toolbox commander, even trying to view it through that lens, is just because she doesn't build boards, right? Is one thing. You can't build a combo with her. You combo with her, but you can't build it over the course of multiple turns because you don't actually get to establish more stuff on the board. You just get to.
I don't think that's the purpose of a toolbox. I think the purpose of a toolbox is not to build a board necessarily. It's to answer whatever needs to be answered.
Well, it makes it harder.
But you have to. You kind of need instant speed to answer things, right? Yisan can answer at instant speed. Vannifar is limited to sorcery speed.
And also the other sort of issue you encounter is, like, let's say you go, wow, there's, a Shuffle Hulk deck that's looking really threatening. I'll find Scavenging Ooze with Yasan. If you do that with Vannifar, and then you go, hey, that, like, I want to find Manglehorn because I'm worried about Isochron Scepter. With Yasan, you just find Manglehorn, but with Vannifar, you are then losing your Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah.
So, like, someone was saying, oh, you just pot up into Craterhoof Behemoth with Vannifar, and then you win. Somebody pointed out, like, this isn't Yasan, you won't have the 8 creatures that you fetched on the way up the chain to kill people. You'll just have...
What we gotta do is you just play Vannifar, and then you pot up the chain to whatever you want, and then you play Seasons Past, and you get all the creatures back.
Yo. Seasons Past to Far.
And then you...
Perfect.
Then you play Eureka and you just put them on the play.
Yo. Okay, is there anything
you play
else you want?
Shardless Agent and you cascade into...
Yeah. We're getting into silly
Hypergenesis
territory with this, so...
We've broken this meta wide open.
I think that's most of what's to be said with Vannifar. We'll look to see what the deck does in the future as it gets refined. But in the meantime, it's gonna do its thing and try to evolve. So don't underestimate it as a deck.
And
that's what a lot of
I
these
would say
Vannifar already has.
Do not respect
if you see a Vannifar, you don't have to worry. They probably can't win on their turn, so just leave it alone.
Just don't bother getting a Gilded Drake or anything. Just just leave it be.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Okay, so
Vannifar is already known in our group as Vannifear. I'll put it that way.
So let's move on to listener questions.
All right.
Let's jam it.
Okay, what do we have up first?
We have, let's see. Some people were making some funny jokes in our listener questions. So
yeah, just hilarious.
If we miss something, it's probably because it was caught between people memeing. Let's see. Let's start with
first. Let's start with Timothy 87's question. Let's do one joke question.
All right. So
okay.
Timothy 87 asks, "Why did she leave me?"
No. What?
Oh, different joke questions.
Different joke questions.
There's too many joke questions. Timothy 87 asks,
I think I know which one we're talking about.
My favorite joke question.
Would you still play MTG if the cards were 3 times as big?
God, I barely play Commander and Paper as is. Are you kidding me?
It's just those joke
I can
decks
continually
cards
assert
my cards wouldn't fit under my bed anymore, so that would be awkward. I'd probably have
my deck boxes already don't fit my Commander decks.
Shuffling with that sounds like, dude, you have to unassistedly shuffle your deck of cards. That sounds like an absolute challenge in Commander with cards of the
he only said 3 times as big. Is that like 3 times in dimensions, or is it like 3 times as thick?
Dude, both.
Are we just like all playing with like top loader sized cards?
Yeah, all
just,
dimensions.
Like painted board.
I mean, think about how big your playmat's gonna have to be.
Just play with a stack of 2x4s.
Who needs card stock when you have card board?
It's gonna be
Okay.
It's not a play mat, it's a play rod.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to some serious questions. So
play hardboard.
I'm gonna butcher this. Delna Jula asks, I have decks of varying power levels for the different play groups I play in. One being a cEDH deck, Selvala. In your opinion, if I go to a GP, is it appropriate for me to bring up my cEDH deck if I don't know what else is being played, or is playing for prizes playing for purposes?
I kind of think that it has to be for a certain amount of prizes before I think you're kind of forgiven for playing a cEDH deck. Because people that have brought up in the past, like, they're playing for prizes at my LGS, doesn't actually bust out my cEDH deck. And you know what? If it's kind of like the store's like, let's play Commander, but let's make it interesting, let's put a pack on the line. If playing your cEDH deck, if there's just one pack on the line, and everyone else is playing casual or that's not what they're trying to play, that seems inappropriate to me.
Yeah,
My favorite way to make money is to
just gonna grind that $5 in store credit every FNM. Come on.
Yeah, but if people are, if it's like a GP Toronto, I don't know if they're doing this anymore, but they did this Commander Championship multi-round tournament where you could win. It was something like $60, $80 in ticks throughout the course of this multi-round tournament.
I got a box of Hour of Devastation from that tournament and like a couple things from the prize wall, and that was all I did. So
yeah, like it.
I think it was basically $40 in prize support per round, single elimination, 3 rounds. So theoretically, if you won all the rounds, that was like $120 in prizes.
Yeah, that's more. You know what? Bring your cEDH deck. It's prizes are on the line. I think significant amount of prizes, and you're paying to be in that tournament. So
yeah, I think it's.
I think when the prize is comparable to the format and like the price of your deck, like that's for some cEDH decks that's a pretty decent chunk of the whole deck, $120.
I feel like it's a lot of it is just it's really just personal, just gauging. You just have to just recognize when or not it's appropriate to actually.
But I mean, like, some people have trouble recognizing that. That's why we're getting this listener question.
It's
right?
like if it's.
I wouldn't bust out my cEDH deck in a Fire on Demand.
Yeah, I would say in the multi-round scheduled events, all bets are off, because those typically have a high enough prize support, and winning in round 1 is potentially a greater enhancement to your. Right, because then you get to potentially also win in the next round. I just wouldn't enter Fire on Demand pods with a cEDH deck unless, if you sit down at the pod and it's like, oh look, we've got Gitrog, Thrasios, Tymna, and something else, like, fine, pull out your cEDH deck. But
also just ask people the power level of their decks.
Talk.
Right? Someone's like Gitrog, janky, like Elf Tribal, Frog Tribal, something like that.
And if somebody has a commander that looks like it's probably not a cEDH deck and they say their deck is competitive, evaluate it based on the commander, not based on the fact that they said the word competitive, because lots of people think Kalia is competitive.
Lots of people think, that's a common one.
I think a pretty good measure of this, just roughly, is if you're playing the event and the level of the event is such that you would call a judge on somebody for something.
I call judges on people at FNM all the time. What are you talking about?
But like if it would be at the level of like where you would call a judge on somebody for like suspicious play, or like for if you think somebody's playing a bit too slow, and it's at the level where you would call a judge on somebody for playing too slow, then I think that's around the appropriate point at which you can start bringing out a cEDH deck. That's
a good rule. I just wanted to mention about Null when he was saying about the price point of the deck. I don't think that's necessarily a great rule of thumb, because there's many decks that are too strong that can be built on a very, very tight budget. USN, for instance, can be built for like $50.
So I kind of meant more like the price point of the format rather than the price point of the cheapest deck in the format.
Okay.
If that clarifies it at all, yeah.
I think an EDH is certainly still a bit of a gray area, because you can have really expensive low power decks where people are just jamming all of their stuff from Legends and whatnot. Just
so
do their deck as Legends tribal.
The difference between winning and losing in an on-demand 4-player commander event at GP Toronto, which is upcoming, is 4 boosters worth of prize tickets. So you need to ask yourself, am I really spending $15 and potentially I'm going to ruin the fun of 3 other people for 4 booster packs of Ravnica Allegiance? And my answer would be no. Maybe yours isn't. But, another thing you can try and do is maybe you can find a few people there with more competitive decks and try and get in a Fire on Demand pod together.
Or just play on the side table.
Or play on the side table.
It's not too full, yeah.
Yep.
So one more thing I'd like to add about this question is that when you show up into one of these pods, and if you're not sure about your power level, just remember that if you're bringing a cEDH deck into one of these pods, you're being a representative of what it means to be a cEDH player to the people you're playing against. You're almost an ambassador of our format and what we are. And so please, if you think there's a risk of like coming across as a pub stomper, or there's going to be a mismatch of power levels, really think hard about whether or not you want to do that, because we're not necessarily seen as cEDH players in such a great light as it is, and we're really trying to change that image by really getting it out there that we're not about pub stomping. We don't want people coming to the subreddit or asking us, how do I pub stomp at my local meta by killing all these casuals with my top tier flash deck. That's not really what we're about. So please keep that in mind when you're firing into these pods at GPs.
All right. Want to do Timmy T 1000s? Yeah, let's do that one. Timmy T 1000 says, I have a tendency to be in a position to train up newer cEDH players. What are some of the good conversations to be had, just beyond basic technical play and tightening up deck lists and such?
I think one of the keys for me is threat assessment. It's a big one, particularly because when you are somewhat more inexperienced, you might not know what a deck can do, what to watch out for. For example, things like sack outlets are actually quite threatening, but I mean, Viscera Seer, it doesn't look threatening, right? It's a one drop. But that's one step closer to, it's like, oh, if they have one of these few cards, they just win the game. So, making sure they understand what their opponent's decks are capable of and what they're trying to do, and figuring out who's in a position to do it. And this is a key for multiplayer that I think people who come from more competitive singleton formats don't necessarily evaluate, is just sort of how strong a given person's position is, how much mana they have access to, how many cards they have in hand, because in 1v1, you don't get to choose who you're pointing your spells at, but you do in free-for-all.
In regards to playing tighter deck lists, I'd say that if someone is newer to cEDH, it's probably advisable to push them towards playing established decks. Because that's kind of what cEDH players, at least on the Discord metas, are expecting to play against, right? Competitive players don't want to typically play against. If they're like sitting down, I'm going to play cEDH, it really kind of spoils some of the fun if someone else is bringing their casual deck into that pod. As much as it spoils the fun for casual players to have one competitive deck in their pod, right? People are playing cEDH because they want to play against cEDH decks. And that doesn't necessarily mean you can't have your own cEDH brew, or play something like, something that's not necessarily established like Vannifar or Muldrotha. But it typically requires that player is knowledgeable enough about the format to make these custom brews.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of my mindset as well, where I think I really enjoy introducing people to the format at the top of the format, just so they have an idea of where the power ceiling of the format is. And it gives them a better idea of what to expect when testing out other decks that might not be at the same level, or when brewing their own decks.
Yeah, that's a good point, showing them what the benchmark they have to compare to is, because a lot of the time, for example, when people post their brews, for example, on Reddit, I just look at them and like I have to wonder, it's like, do you understand what this deck is going up against? Like how efficient the existing decks are and how fast and how much interaction they can jam in. And so, yeah, showing them, it's like, here are some of the top tier decks and here's sort of how they work. If they do want to put their own flair on a deck or try something new, they have an appropriate benchmark rather than this beats the people I play against who don't play cEDH.
Yeah. I think that's pretty good for this question. And let's do one more question before we wrap it up. Do we have one lined up? Which one?
Sure. I can do Savage Mushroom's question about Necropotence. So, essentially starts off by saying he's been playing many different decks, many of them including Necropotence. More often than not, I find it awkward playing Necropotence either to cast it for 3 black mana or know how far deep to go down in the deck. I find I normally pay just enough to bring my hand back up to 7 cards. It generally feels bad to play, which makes me think I'm playing it very incorrectly. So I guess his question is, how do you play Necropotence? I think the one thing that stands out to me right off the bat is that you shouldn't just be drawing up to 7 cards. I think one of the powers of Necropotence is that you could pay 9 life and therefore assure a much higher average quality of cards in your hand. Obviously, you can go all the way in and pay down to, a couple life. This is pretty common in Zero decks, though you don't play any Zero decks. To go down to a really low amount, cast Shimmer, win the game.
Yeah. With unless your deck is, you should go down to the level that your deck is designed to go down, and that's something that's not necessarily always intuitive. And if you go find a primer, they're not necessarily, this deck is designed to go this far into Necropotence. A lot of it is contextual. So if you're just doing a value Necropotence, like Null was saying, you've got to evaluate. Am I just trying to increase my card quality? Am I trying to dig for something? Am I just trying to find answers? Am I stalling? Am I at risk of taking damage from combat on board? These are kind of things you need to evaluate. One thing that's not necessarily going to win you the game is if you think about it like this: every turn with Necropotence in play that you're not winning the game is -1 card, right? You're losing card advantage from your draw step. So if you're just trying to take this game super long and you're not gaining life, you are reducing your card advantage over time. So you shouldn't try to, if you have a Necropotence in play, your goal is not to try to drag the game out for as long as you can. It should be to try to close the game. So, not every deck can be built to, go find Shimmermer or to find Dakmor Salvage and combo off with the Necropotence in play. Not all these decks are just using it as like a draw, whatever. A draw 20, draw 30. Some of these decks, it's, okay, I need to draw 10 cards, 15 cards to try and find my tutor that's going to then find me the cards that allow me to win the game. But you're not going to find that if you're just paying 5 life to drop to 7 cards or 8 cards and then pitching the worst card. Sometimes you need to be a bit more aggressive with it.
Yeah, so a couple of things I would say about Necropotence. I am generally more reluctant to include it, particularly with the triple black casting cost. It's not a card that has a huge amount of appeal for me, but it's obviously very powerful. I would never just drop to 7. Look, at the very least, you should draw up to 7 plus the number of cards in your hand that you are willing to discard. And probably a little bit past that at the very least, like a pretty typical, maybe you go to 10 or 11 and then, you have 3 lands, so you pitch 2 of those, and then, the one card that you don't think is very good right now. Just going up to 7 misses the opportunity. Like, some of those cards are going to be dead, and you could have discarded them and potentially seen real cards. And then another thing to always keep in mind when you're using Necropotence, particularly when you're looking to go deep, is considering how much damage you're likely to take between activating Necropotence and winning the game, and how much life you actually need to win the game. For example, I've seen a lot of people do something like, I'll Necropotence down to, 4. And then they tap a pain land, and then they cast a Vampiric Tutor, and then, they want to do something else like, I wanted to, play this Gitaxian Probe for free, and I can't. Or something like that. To draw my card off my Vampiric Tutor, or whatever it is. So
when playing Shimmer, like these are things you factor in all the time, right? Force of Will costs a life. Vampiric Tutor costs 2 life. Or Quicken into Imperial Seal, another 2 life. Like you've got to factor this in on all of your pain lands. You need to figure out how much you can leave yourself as the maximum, and you don't always want to go for the maximum.
Yeah, so
But when you do, you need to figure that
I
out.
would say you're rarely going to want to go below 5 if you are just going for it as much as you can. If you're saying, okay, I'm going to try and untap and win, or I'm going to try and win in my end step with Shimmerzer, and the board is not threatening, so it's basically just how much life do I need. You can probably go a little bit below 10, not a lot, like 8 life is usually will not punish you. You can crack a fetch, you can cast a vampiric tutor, and do something else, and still have a couple life to play with.
Well, there are times in Gitrog too, if you're digging for a specific card, and you can win at instant speed, you will go to the maximum. Like you will, and I guess one of the things, so Gitrog, if you're trying to dig for Dakmor salvage, and you're like, I am committed to winning this turn, then you will go down to 1 life. That's something you will do. You don't really go to 1 life in Shimmerzer for the reasons I said, because you need to factor into that life, but you will do it in something like Gitrog. And one other thing that's kind of a special case for Necropotence is Tazri. Because Tazri, you're trying to dig for specific cards and then also trying to gain advantage when cards are exiled. So there you're kind of incentivized to go a bit deeper, even if you're not. You like Spain said, you do have to be cognizant of paying life if you don't hit it, like just for your tutors and whatnot. But that's something where you'll go a bit deeper than I'd say the average deck.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Oh yeah, and I guess one more thing about the casting cost of triple black. Your decks are that with Necropotence are usually the mana bases are built to be able to accommodate for Necropotence. So you've got to be aware of that while fetching, based off the hands you keep, right? Or when you're tutoring, if you're trying to tutor for Necropotence, you've got to be aware of whether or not your mana base can currently support it. So that's something that factors in when evaluating when to necro and when not to, or what to fetch and what not. Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. So remember to follow us on Discord, our Into the North Discord. That's linked in the show notes. You can contact us. You can contact us at our email. That's intothenorthpodcast@gmail.com. Please give us feedback on the Discord or through email or on our Reddit posts or wherever. We love to hear from you guys, and we love ideas for future show topics that you want to hear or for special episodes as well. Check out the cEDH subreddit and the cEDH Discord as well as PlayDH Discord. I guess our next episode will be in a month, and our next special episode will be sometime in the future. Not sure yet. We don't even know what we're going to cover yet, but give us suggestions. We'll see what we can do. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.